Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a real digital detective story. We're going to be looking at a deeply relatable, honestly kind of painful scenario from the world of Haskell programming, specifically focusing on the really intricate task of generating ebooks. Our guide for this little journey is a June 2026 developer log written by a programmer named Ang. It's just a fantastic, real-world look at how software actually gets built, refined, and, well, sometimes accidentally broken. We're going to break down exactly what went wrong in Ang's code, why it happened, and how it was ultimately solved. So I want you to think about this. What actually happens when a bug fix creates a brand new edge case? If you've spent any amount of time writing, testing, or fixing software, you have absolutely lived this exact nightmare. It's literally one of the most ironic, universal realities in engineering, right? You track down a problem, you write this incredibly clever solution to fix it, and in doing so, you inadvertently rip open a trapdoor for an entirely new, completely unforeseen issue. And that is exactly where we find our developer, Ang, in this story. We actually kick things off with a simple note. Dear Interweb, continues from my previous post. Yours truly, Ang. This is pulled straight out of the source material, part 154 of Ang's Notes on Haskell-Programming. It gives us this really authentic, intimate peek into the daily grind of a developer. You know, this isn't some highly polished corporate PR statement. It's a raw, ongoing journal of pure technical problem solving. Ang is actively working through a problem, essentially talking out loud to the internet and bringing all of us right along for the ride. All right, let's set the scene. Ang was right in the middle of testing ebook generation. Now, as we know, ebooks rely heavily on perfectly structured metadata. We're talking things like the title, author, publication date, tags. All of that needs to be parsed and formatted flawlessly. But right in the middle of testing this absolutely crucial generation process, a critical parsing flaw suddenly just appeared out of nowhere. Something was going terribly, horribly wrong with how the Haskell program was reading that data. Now, this failure didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was a result of a really ironic chain of events. See, Ang had recently implemented this seemingly brilliant, super user-friendly bug fix. Previously, the parser was pretty rigid, so Ang went in and made the ordering of each metadata field optional. Sounds like a great upgrade, right? Well, actually, no. Because those strict rules were relaxed, unforeseen edge cases started creeping in during testing. And that led directly to a catastrophic failure where the metadata was actually being swallowed by the parser. Let's dig into what that actually means in practice. The specific technical symptom here goes by a highly descriptive term, swallowing the metadata. In programming, your parser is supposed to go through a document and neatly categorize different pieces of text. But here, the parser completely loses its boundaries. It mistakenly consumes an entire structured metadata field and just treats the whole thing as a basic paragraph. Imagine opening up a brand new digital book, and instead of a nice, clean title page, the very first paragraph of the story is just this massive, messy data dump of the author's name, the date, and some genre tags. It completely breaks the structural integrity of the ebook. And you know, the real frustration here is that Ang had done everything right. Test cases were already explicitly added to verify and validate the metadata parsing. But that shiny new optional ordering fix inadvertently created a massive blind spot. It essentially bypassed the safety nets those earlier tests provided. Because the ordering was now flexible, the parser encountered unforeseen edge cases where it simply couldn't parse the text correctly, leading to that huge swallowing error. It is a textbook example of how increasing flexibility in a system can, at the exact same time, drastically increase its fragility. So how do we fix it? Well, the solution is almost laughably simple. A backslash and an N. Just a newline character. By enforcing a strict check for this newline character, the parser is finally given a hard boundary. Ang realized that the parser was basically running wild because it literally didn't know when to stop reading the optional metadata. This single, tiny character check tells the parser exactly when the metadata field is officially over, which stops the cascading failure completely dead in its tracks. The mechanical difference before and after this fix is honestly striking. Without the newline check, the parser is basically a runaway freight train, swallowing the entire metadata field and treating crucial structural data as just another standard paragraph. But once you implement it, that newline acts as a rigid stop sign. It prevents the swallowing, it ensures the metadata is extracted perfectly, and it parses the rest of the text exactly as intended. It's just a beautifully elegant, minimalist solution to a pretty nasty system failure. Of course, Ang is a pro. They didn't just slap this new line check into the codebase and call it a day. Ang actively added an explicit, brand new test case right into the mix, and this is absolutely crucial. This new test case specifically verifies that the new line check successfully prevents the parser from swallowing the text. It guarantees that moving forward, the accurate extraction of metadata for these ebooks is totally locked in. So even if some other developer comes along and tweaks the code a year from now, this test case will stand as a firm guardrail to ensure this exact edge case never ever breaks the generation process again. Which brings us to a final thought for us to chew on. How many edge cases are hiding behind your last bug fix? Eng's journey with this Haskell parser is just a perfect microcosm of technical problem solving. We try to make things better, like making field ordering optional, and we end up breaking things in ways we couldn't possibly foresee. It really forces us to look at the hidden consequences of our own brilliant solutions. So the next time you apply a quick fix, whether that's in a block of code, a workflow at your job, or whatever it is, take a beat to look for the invisible boundaries you might have just removed. Because you know what? You might just need to add a new line check of your own.